6-degree
Please,
notice.
Prabhuji, since 2 days.
Okay, we will just revise the previous verse. I'm audible, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhuji, audible.
We'll just revise the previous verse and then we'll go to the today's verse. So yeah, last time we discussed about verse number 7, awakening taste for Krishna's name. So we discussed about this verse last time. Syat Krishna Nam Charitadi Sitapta Vidya Pito Patapta Rasanasya Narochikanu Kintu Adarad Anudinam Khalu Seva Chushta Sadvi Kramat Bhavati Tadgad Moola Hantri. Oh, if you see in the second line, there is a last word, nu. So, aho, even the delightfully sweet sugar candy. Sita api. Api means even though. So, even though the delightfully sweet sugar candy, which is naturally sweet in sugar, Krishna Nama Charitadi, of Krishna's names, form, qualities, and pastimes. Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapta Vidya. Even though the delightfully sweet sugar candy of Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastime, na syat, it doesn't give a taste to the tongue. Na syat rochika rasanasya. Rasanasya means the tongue. To the tongue, it doesn't give the nectar, even though it's very delightful and it has a natural sweet taste, but it doesn't give the taste to us. Why? Upatapta, because it is afflicted, because that tongue is afflicted with what? Pita, jaundice, of ignorance. Pito patapta, rasanasya rochikanu. Because of avidya, our tongue is afflicted with the jaundice. Or in other words, he who is afflicted by the ignorance born of being indifferent to Krishna from time without beginning, time immemorial. So one who is in avidya or being afflicted by this ignorance, he will not be able to taste Krishna's holy name. Then what is the hope for us? Do we have some hope? Because we are also in ignorance, even though the sugar candy is very sweet of Krishna's holy name, but we are not able to taste. So what is the hope? Kintu. Kintu means but there is some hope. What is the hope? Khalusa eva. Khalu means certainly there is some hope of tasting that sugar candy of Krishna's name, activities, and his pastimes. How? When taken therapeutically, anudinam, constantly, with respect or faith, with full respect and faith towards the holy name and his pastimes, Krishna's pastime, when a proper procedure of medicine is taken, in that way, if one takes this process in his life, then there is a chance. What? Krama, then gradually, it will not happen suddenly. This will happen gradually. So then gradually it will become bhavati, kramat bhavati, swadvi. This holy name will become tasteful to us. Hantri, it will destroy then to the root. Not the superficial layer will be destroyed, but to the root, the ignorance will be destroyed. That disease of indifference to Krishna, which is expressed in the form of absorption in mundane sense enjoyment. So, aho, even the delightful sugar candy of Krishna's name, form, and qualities and pastime is not tasteful to the tongue. Is not tasteful to the tongue. That is afflicted by the jaundice of ignorance. Or in other words, he who is afflicted by the ignorance born of being indifferent to Krishna from a time without beginning. But certainly that very sugar candy of Krishna's name and activities and so forth, when taken therapeutically, constantly, and with respect. So there is a proper procedure and there is a constant endeavor and with proper faith, when these things are taken into consideration, then gradually it becomes very tasteful. And when it becomes tasteful, the taste only will destroy the ignorance to the root. That disease of indifference to Krishna will be destroyed till the root, which is expressed in the form of our absorption, abhinivesh, in mundane sense enjoyment. So our abhinivesh is currently into mundane sense enjoyment. When the taste for Krishna's holy name will develop, then this absorption in mundane thing will reduce and we will be having taste for Krishna's holy name. So we have reached till this point very systematically. Rupa Goswami has established till now that first one has to control his urges, then take the association of devotees, how one has to situate himself in the association of devotees. Then in the association of devotees, he has to start his bhajan kriya of this chanting holy name. Initially, the chanting of holy name will not appear so like tasteful, but gradually, as this verse says, gradually the things will become Krishna conscious, the activities will become very tasteful to us, his form and activities and his pastime, hearing of his pastime, this will happen gradually. But with respect, proper faith and constant endeavor is required in this path. That is understood in this verse. So anybody has some questions related to this verse, or we will jump to next verse today. Who has done this mark on the screen? Someone has just did this yellow mark on the screen. If possible, you can remove that mark. Okay, verse number 8. So a question might arise, where to perform this bhakti then? You have told that the bhakti has to be performed in association, and initially the Krishna's name will appear not tasteful, but slowly, gradually, Krishna's name will appear tasteful to us because when ignorance will be removed. So what is the best place to perform bhakti and how? So that will be described in this verse. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vraje tadanuragi jananugami kalam nayed akhilamiti upadesha saram. I will recite one more time, then you can also recite. 4 of you can recite. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vraje tadanuragi jananugami kalam nayedakhilam iti upadesha saram. Some of you can recite this verse. Anybody?
Tannama rupa charitadi sukritananu smritya kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan brajetad anuragi jananugami kalam nayed akhilam iti upadesha saram. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Someone else?
Hare Krishna. Tannamarupa charitadi sukirtananu smrutyo yakramena rasanana manasi niyojya tishtan rajeta dhanuragi jananugami kalam nayedakhilam iti upadesha saram.
Okay. Someone else?
Hare Krishna. Tannamarupa charitadi sukirtanu smritya kramena rasanamanasi niyojya tishtan rajeta dhanuragi jananugami kalam nae akhilam iti upadesha saram.
Okay. Last one. Anyone last?
Tannamarupacharitadi sukirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vrajetadανuragi jananugami kalam nayedakhilam iti upadesha saram. Hare Krishna. I'm so sorry. I think I have cut off somebody. I interrupted someone.
Okay. Anyone else want to recite? Eagerly waiting.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. तन्नामरूपचरितादिषु कीर्तनानु स्मृत्यो क्रमेण रसनामनसि नियोज्य तिष्ठान् व्रजेत तनुरागी जनानुगामी कालं नयेत किलमिति उपदेशसारम्.
Hare Krishna. So this verse is actually talking about Raganuga Bhakti. So most of us, we are actually on the platform of, at least I can speak of myself that I'm on the platform of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. In that also, I'm trying to practice in a struggling state. But there are a lot of things which are very beautifully mentioned. At least we can understand what is Raganuga Bhakti and how one has to reach there and what is the pathway to leading to and what are the different aspects of it. So some of the things will be covered in this session, and then later when we will be discussing about Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then more details will come in those sessions. So Tishtan Braje, living in Braj. So question was asked, where to live, where to perform this bhakti nicely? So answer is given, one has to live in Braj Bhumi, Vrindavan Dham. Tishtan Braje, Anugami, as a follower, not as a leader. Everyone is a follower, but some are given as a position, and as soon as a person follows nicely, he becomes a nice follower, always becomes a nice leader also. So one becomes, as a follower, he has to stay in Vrindavan of the eternal residence of Raja. He has to become a follower of a eternal residence of Raja. So those who are Brajvasis, who are living there in Vrindavan, one has to become a follower of those Brajvasis. These Brajvasis, they possess inherent spontaneous love towards Supreme Lord. They have very spontaneous love towards Krishna. So when a person situates himself in Vrindavan Dham and becomes a follower of those devotees, Anuragi Jana, those who have rag towards, those who have attachment towards Krishna, those devotees, if a person becomes a follower of those devotees and situates himself in Vrindavan, then they are followers of Krishna. They are dedicated to the process of Krishna consciousness. Then one should utilize all his time, not just a namesake follower, but when a person becomes a follower of a Brajvasi, then one should utilize kalam nayed. Kalam nayed. One should utilize his all time by engaging niyojya. How? Starting from the tongue. Rasana. So in the previous verse, it was said that our tongue is not able to taste Krishna's holy name properly. Krishna's form and activities is not a person is not able to relish fully. So here also in Vrindavan, when a person becomes a follower of a Brajvasi and is trying to follow the Raganuga path, then also he practices in a way that he engages his tongue first, rasana. So engaging the tongue first and utilizing all his time in engaging in his tongue, and then manasi. Then the second step is to remember Krishna's activity in his mind. This happens kramena, sequentially. So first one has to hear properly so that Krishna conscious activities and Krishna's glorious pastimes, Krishna is called as Uttam Shloka. So those pastimes then when goes through the ears to the heart, then one can remember kramena. How? Then after remembering, he does sukirtana, third stage. He glorifies Krishna and speaks everywhere. And Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam. Prahlad Maharaj also says Shravan, Kirtan and Smaran. Sukirtana Anusmrityo. So then this remembrance and chanting very nicely, meticulously chanting. So Kirtan is chanting. Kirtan can be chanting of our holy name when we do Kirtan, or Krishna Katha. Doing Krishna Katha is also Kirtan. Sukirtana. Sukirtana means meticulous chanting, very nicely done chanting. So then the strong remembrance of Krishna comes in this way. So first the tongue vibrates Krishna's activities and Krishna's holy name, and then kramena, sequentially it reaches to a stage, then the remembrance of Krishna increases. and his chanting is very meticulous and perfect. What happens then? Nam Rupa Charitadi. One has to chant the holy names, describe about form of Krishna, qualities of Krishna, and pastimes of Krishna. And then he remembers Krishna's pastime and names. Tat of Brajendra Nandan Krishna, specifically those pastimes which Krishna has performed in Vrindavan, those specific pastimes. Iti Saram Akhilam. This only is the essence of all instructions. Iti Upadesha Saram. Tannama Rupa Charitadi Sukirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasana Manasi Niyojya. Tishthan Vraje. One has to situate himself in Vrindavan. That is the best place. Follow Jananugami. Tad Anuragi Jananugami. And one has to spend Kalam Nayed Akhilam, all his time, constantly in describing and following the Brajavasi in Vrindavan. So we'll go into details now. At this point means till verse number 7. Till verse number 7, these questions may arise in the mind of a new sadhaka. Where should one reside to cultivate the devotional activities headed by the chanting of Sri Krishna's name? And how should one go about it? So how one should reside, where should one reside to cultivate these devotional activities headed by Krishna's name, and how one should go about it? So this verse, now 8th verse, which constitutes the essence of all instruction, iti upadesha sara. So this verse has been composed to answer these questions. Whom should we follow? There are so many followers on YouTube, Facebook. People claim that I have so many followers and all. But whom should we really follow? The conventional meaning of name of Krishna is drawn from the verbal root krish, which means to attract or draw toward oneself. So Krishna is called because he attracts everyone. Akarshati iti Krishna, because Krishna attracts everyone. So he is the perfect person to one should follow actually and get to and draw towards himself. Thus, Krishna is famed as the attractor of the hearts of all living entities in the entire world. In Vrindavan, in Vraja, he is known as the Yashodananda, the darling son of Yashoda. So first, it has been described whom to follow. One has to follow the associates who are living in Vrindavan and who are following this personality who is known as Yashodananda, who is the attracting personality of entire world. So there are so many glories in 10th canto which have been described about the different inhabitants of Vrindavan. Vrindavan Sakhi Bhuvo Vitanoti Kirtim. Vrindavan has actually become glorious on this planet. It has increased the glory of this planet also. This planet Earth has become glorious because Vrindavan is there. Because Lord Krishna and Lord Balram, every day they used to go in Vrindavan and their footprints were there. Even in Vaikuntha Vishnu wears his slippers. But in Vrindavan, Krishna never wore any slippers. So everywhere Krishna's footprints are there, and his associates have shown the highest level of devotion towards him. So that's why Vrindavan is very special, and the followers of Vrindavan are very special. Therefore, all devotees should utilize the entirety of their time. All devotees should utilize the entirety of their time in engaging their tongues in performing kirtan of Sri Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes, and their mind in remembrance of him. So these statements are talking about rasana. The tongue is called rasana. So in this verse, as it is said that one has to follow in the footsteps of Brajvasi and start using his tongue to glorify Krishna. And then smrityo kramena. The next stage is in mind he has to remember about Krishna. They should reside only in Vrajavindal and follow elevated devotee. So answer has been given here. Whom should we follow? First, it was described how Krishna is the most attractive personality, and those devotees who are constantly glorifying Krishna by different ways, by his names, form, qualities, and pastimes. So one has to become a follower of a very elevated devotee. They should reside only in Sri Vrajamandal and follow elevated devotees. How should one follow these devotees? One thing is understood that one has to follow these devotees. But what is the procedure to follow these devotees? How one should follow? There are two types of devotion one can go about. There are two types of devotion one can think of and follow these devotees. What are those two? One is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, devotion performed in conjunction with the rules and regulation of the scriptures, as we all are performing. Ado Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sang, Tata Bhajan Kriya. We are on the platform of Bhajan Kriya, everyone, and we are on the platform of Anartha Nivritti. Everyone is going under this process. Some might have crossed this stage also. At least I can say I have not crossed Anartha Nivritti. So that is the biggest stage also. And among all the stages, Anartha Nivritti is the biggest stage. The biggest Anartha is to think that we are the enjoyers. And in this way, one has to come over this thing and consider Krishna as the only enjoyer of, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suhurdam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. So in this way, there is one type of devotion which is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, following the rules and regulation very strictly, which are given in the scriptures. Another one is Raganuga, which is spontaneous devotion. So till this 7th verse, Rupa Goswami has very clearly established the person who is performing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. In the 8th verse now, we'll be jumping from, at least theoretically, we'll be jumping from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. As this verse only says that we have to situate ourselves in Vrindavan Dham, and one has to follow in the footsteps of Brajvasis. So that is Raganuga, which is the person who is on that platform of Raganuga. One has to follow in the footsteps of that person. So accordingly, based on these two types of devotion, there are two types of sadhakas also. Who are those sadhakas? Those who follow the path of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. One is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakta. Another one is those who follow the path of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So Raganuga Bhakti. So both have processes, and there are two sadhakas then, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So in this way, based on among these two, it is especially desirable to follow a Raganuga Bhakta. So here it is said, among these two stages of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakta. So especially it is desirable to follow a Raganuga Bhakta. But to reach this stage, one has to cross or perfectly follow the first seven verses. Till the time a person has not followed first 7 verses properly, he cannot think of jumping to this stage to follow artificially someone who is very on the high elevated platform. Those who are situated in Vrindavan, they have spontaneous love towards Supreme Lord. So when a person has crossed, or when a person has properly followed those principles which have been laid down in the first 7 verses, then he can jump to this stage. The meaning of Tad Anuraga Jananugami is to follow the intimate eternal devotees in Sri Krishna's Vrajalila. So one has to follow these intimate eternal devotees who are performing various activities to assist Krishna. One has to follow on those footsteps. Tad Anuragi, they have they have attachment towards Krishna. Tad means Krishna, towards Krishna. They are followers of Krishna and they have attachment. And Jananugami, and we have to become their follower. So in the beginning verse, in the first verse, if you understand, the first verse of NOI, if you remember, it was told that one can become a guru of the entire world. One can have disciples all over the world if he controls his urges. Now, from that verse to this verse, Rupa Goswami has actually transformed the heart of the person because he has followed the 7 verses. Rupa Goswami tells that he becomes a perfect follower first. and follower of that personality who is staying in Vrindavan as a menial servant of Krishna. So in this way, he has turned the table now, that if you want to become a leader of the whole entire world, you have to become a first perfect follower of the person who is Krishna's devotee. One should cultivate Krishna Bhakti under the guidance of those Rasika Gurus who are themselves followers of the intimate eternal devotees of Sri Rajendranandan, the enactor of human-like pastimes. So in this way, one should cultivate Krishna Bhakti under the guidance of Rasik Gurus. Who are these Rasik Gurus? Our Guru Parampara. Our Guru Parampara is the Rasik Gurus who have followed very nicely, and they are the perfect Brajavasis. So in this way, one has to understand the method and the topmost place. What is the method when a person is situated in Vrindavan, and what is the topmost place? Again, that same thing will be revised, but in a different way. This verse describes the method of bhajan as well as the topmost place for performing this bhajan. So this verse, 8th verse, describes the method of performing bhajan by following in the footsteps of a Brajavasi, and also the topmost place for performing is Vrindavan Dham. With the intention of incessantly executing the gradual process of sadhana, one should utilize every moment of his life, as that verse also says, kalam nayed akhilam. One should utilize his time fully by engaging the tongue in nicely performing kirtan of Sri Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes. Then the mind in smaran or remembrance upon them. So the next stage of nicely performing the activities or engaging the mind or engaging the tongue, the next stage is to have proper smaran in their mind, remembrance of Krishna. So Krishna's name and form and qualities will be remembered by a devotee very nicely who has chanted and engaged his tongue nicely in glorifying Krishna and hearing first. This process should be executed while residing in Vrindavan under the guidance of devotees who are immersed in Brajaras. So a question comes here, how can we reside in Vrindavan Dham? Because this process can be executed only in Vrindavan and under the guidance of devotees who are immersed in Brajarasa. Anybody has some comment on this, how we can reside in Vrindavan Dham when we are situated in different countries and working professionals, how this is possible that one day we can practice this? Anybody has some comments on this?
Sabji, we can be in Vrindavan Dham by our consciousness.
Great. Anyone else?
Association of devotees.
Association of devotees who are having the mood of Vrindavan. So yes, this is the answer actually, which has been described in the next slide, next statement. The performance of this Manas Seva. So immediately it is said, first statement said that one has to reside in Vrindavan Dham under the guidance of devotees who are immersed in Brajarasa. Second statement says the performance of this Manas Seva. So this is Manas Seva. It doesn't mean that you have to be physically present. One has to be mentally very aware. The performance of this Manas Seva, service rendered within the mind, is dependent solely upon residing mentally in Braja. So there are two people who stay in Vrindavan. The person who stays in Vrindavan and has a consciousness of Vrindavan. The person who is, the person who is physically there and mentally also there. So that is one category. Another person who stays in Vrindavan is the person who is not physically there but mentally very much there. There are two devotees who are there in Vrindavan. And there is no third category of physically staying but not mentally staying, but not in a way of like Manas Seva doing. So this performance of this Manas Seva, service rendered within the mind, is dependent solely upon residing mentally in Vrindavan. So that is the thing. You see from the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, how much time he has stayed in Vrindavan. He just went for a few days, did parikrama, visited all the holy places, but his life shows that entire life he was just remembering Krishna's name and activities of gopis with Krishna. And he says, Gopi bhartor padakam layor dasa dasanudat, that we have to become servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis. So his personal life he has shown, because Mahaprabhu came in a mood to show how a devotee has to live his life. So in this way he has shown that in separation one can perform maximum services, because that builds the mood more and more. And gopis were also separated with Krishna after so long. Like Krishna, when he left Vrindavan, they were separated for entire life actually. They were not able to see Krishna. And they were waiting, and their love was increasing every day. So in this way, it doesn't mean that one has to situate himself physically, but mentally one can definitely be there. Like many of our acharyas also, and present acharyas also, and previous acharyas also, and many devotees also, they do manas parikrama of Govardhan. They just close their eyes and they remember where they're roaming around. And fortunately, here in GV, where I am staying, there is Vrindavan Dham and Yamuna ji is there. So not even mentally, we can also physically also look at those places and enhance our love towards Krishna. So devotional life of a sadhaka. There are various stages in devotional life of a sadhaka. What are these stages? What is Shravan Dasha? It's not Das, it's Shravan Dasha. Shravan Dasha, Varan Dasha, Smaran Dasha, Apana Dasha, and Sampatti Dasha. So let us discuss these different dashas. Let's go to first Shravan Dasha. What is Shravan Dasha? When the devotional life of a sadhaka, Shravan Dasha means, or the stage of hearing. This comes first, very first stage of like a sadhaka is to hear properly. As Acharya say, if you have the foundation very nicely built up, the building will definitely come up very nice. If the foundation is not proper, then the whole thing collapses, even though it looks beautiful outside. But the foundation is the key to that. So in the devotional life also, for a sadhaka, Shravan Dasha, or the stage of hearing, comes first, and that is the solid foundation he gets. In this stage, he hears Krishna Nam and narrations of Krishna's form, qualities, and pastime. In this stage of Shravan Dasha. By doing this more and more, he gradually, the process is gradual, he gradually becomes more mature, and then the stage of Varan Dasha begins. Varan Dasha means he imbibes those things by hearing Krishna now. The embodiment becomes. What is Varan Dasha? Varan Dasha says, in this stage he begins performing kirtan of those topics which he was hearing. So first the hearing stage, then the kirtan stage. So as Prahlad Maharaj, Shravam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Pada Sevanam, Anuchanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam. Iti Pumsa Arpita Vishnu, Bhaktivedanta Lakshanam. So these are the 9 limbs of devotional service, starting from Shravan, Kirtanam, Smaran. So Shravan is the first step, second step is Kirtan. So in this way, this is also told here that the first was Shravan Dasha, then Varan Dasha. And starts performing Kirtan. Kirtan is like performing, speaking Krishna Katha to those who don't know anything about like going out and preaching everywhere, and doing Kirtan for self-nourishment also and for upliftment of others also. By performing Kirtan with the specific devotional mode, one is cultivating. It's a cultivation. Bhakti is a cultivation, as Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita. When we say cultivation, that requires activity. So process of devotional service is a cultivation. He enters into Smaran Dasha. So Shravan, then Varan, then Smaran. This is the third stage. This is the stage of remembrance. This Smaran Dasha has 5 stages. Third, as I will go again, just to revise. Shravan Dasha, Varan Dasha, Smaran Dasha, Apana Dasha, and Sampatti Dasha. So we have reached till third one. So Smaran Dasha also has 5 stages. What are these 5 stages? First is a basic smaran of Krishna's activities. Basic means as one speaks Krishna Katha, as one preaches to others, so there is some smaran which happens to him also. And he's the first beneficiary for those, like whenever he speaks something about Krishna. So second stage is dharana. The more it becomes intensified, then dhyana, then anusmriti. Anusmriti means, anu means constant and continuous, smriti means remembrance. So continuous remembrance of Krishna's pastime. Then there is samadhi, the full absorption. So these are the 5 stages of smaran. So when a person is very intensely remembering Krishna, that is called very intense smaran of Krishna is samadhi. Meditation where the mind sometimes becomes distracted is called first stage of smaran. As I discussed 5 stages of smaran, so those things will be listed down now. So meditation where the mind sometimes becomes distracted. So when sometimes we chant holy name or sometimes we try to hear Krishna Katha, but we are distracted. So that is the first level of smaran. We are trying to remember Krishna after the 2 stages of Shravan and Varan. Third stage, smaran starts in this way that we are somewhat distracted. Second stage of smaran is smaran that is devoid of such distraction is called dharana. Unbroken contemplation upon the object of meditation is called dhyan. So dhyan means it is unbroken now. Earlier it was distracted, then less distracted or devoid of any distraction, but now it is continuous and unbroken contemplation on the object, which is Sri Krishna's pastime and activities. When dhyan is performed constantly, it is called anusmriti. So constant word is there. Anu means constantly and very frequently. Like in the previous verse also it was said anudinam, and with respect, kintu anudinam adara, very respectfully and very constantly, every day, sincerely performing this contemplation, and it becomes anusmriti. So first was smaran, then dharan, then dhyan, then anusmriti, and last one is samadhi. Once meditation becomes entirely free from impediments, there are no impediments now on this smaran process. And then he wholly uninterrupted way of like full absorption is there in thinking about Krishna and performing his remembrance about and meditation. When there is no interruption in between, that is called samadhi. Samadhi, sama, there is a conglomeration of 2 words, sama and dhi. Dhi means intelligent, sama means equipoised. So when a person is very much equipoised in the remembrance of Krishna without any dualities in his mind, then it is called samadhi. 4th stage is apana dasha. After this smaran dasha, which had 5 stages, then one enters the stage of apana dasha. In this stage, the sadhaka achieves realization of his pure spiritual identity. He understands who he is in the spiritual world. This is a very highly elevated stage when he understands what his spiritual identity is there. After this, in the stage known as Sampatti Dasha, he attains Golok Vrindavan. He goes back to Godhead, where he attains his original Swarupa and serves Krishna there. That is the Sampatti Dasha. At this time, he finally obtains a spiritual form and is appointed to his eternal service in the spiritual realm. So the person has reached the spiritual abode and is serving Krishna there. So that is mentioned in this Sampatti Dasha. After this, in this stage known as Sampatti Dasha, he attains Vastu Siddhi. At this time, he finally obtains a spiritual form and is appointed to his eternal service in the spiritual realm. So Shravan, then Varan, then Smaran, then 4th was Apana, and then Sampatti. 5 stages are mentioned. Sampatti means his real wealth he receives. Sampatti means some wealth. So the real wealth is he is attaining his spiritual form there in the spiritual world. As Prahlad Maharaj says in one of the verses, Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. The people don't know what their real wealth is. So here it is mentioned that the person knows now what his real wealth is, and he has reached to that platform also, where he has achieved the highest wealth and is properly situated as a servant of Krishna and performing spiritual activities as an eternal service to Supreme Lord. So how this transition takes place, what is the point we understand that we have jumped from Vedi to Raganuga? Anyone interested to know from what is the junction when we'll understand we have crossed now from Vedi to Raganuga? So in this way, this will be described now. When a devotee following the path of Vaidhi Bhakti abandons his many varieties of material desires and performs bhajan in accordance with the instruction of Shastra, Sadguru and Vaishnavas. So this we are following. We are doing Vedi Sadhana Bhakti. We are trying to avoid all kinds of nonsense desires and perform our bhajans which are being properly instructed by Guru Sadhu Shastra. So then a person reaches to this state of ruchi. So what are the 9 stages? Ado Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sang, Tato Bhajan Kriya, Tato Anartha Nivritti. Then Nishtha, then Ruchi, then Asakti, then Bhav and Prem. So these are the stages. So this stage is which one? Ado Shraddha, Tata Sadhu Sang, Tata Bhajan Kriya, Tato Anartha Nivritti, then Nishtha, then Ruchi. So at this stage, when a person has crossed over anartha nivritti and has attained full nishtha, then ruchi, then when this natural taste about Krishna's holy name and pastime, when this arises, there that is the point where a person jumps from Vedi to Raganuga. He can then shift to Raganuga platform. When this arises in his bhajan, this ruchi arises. Upon the appearance of this ruchi, he abandons the path of Vaidhi Bhakti and enters the path of Raganuga Bhakti. So this is the transition. He abandons the path of Vaidhi Bhakti, enters the path of Raganuga Bhakti. So question might come. So that means he will stop all these rules and regulations which have been mentioned in the Shastra. Will he stop those? Let's see what comes in the future slides. How this has been described, how a person follows those rules and regulations even on the platform of Raganuga. It is mentioned in Sanatan Shiksha in 22nd chapter. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Sanatan Goswami. Ragatmika bhakti mukhe vrajavasi jane taranugat bhakti re raganuga name. The original inhabitants of Vrindavan are attached to Krishna spontaneously in devotion service. Mukhe vrajavasi gane. Vrajavasi gan, those inhabitants of Krishna or those inhabitants of Vrindavan, they're attached. Mukhya means very seriously, they're attached to Krishna's devotion service. Nothing can compare to such devotion service which is called Ragatmika Bhakti. So the person who has perfected his Raganuga sadhana, he is called Ragatmika Bhakta. And the person who is just jumping from Vedi to Raganuga, he has to follow this Ragatmika Bhakta, which is called Ragatmika Bhakti. When a devotee follows in the footsteps of the devotees of Vrindavan, his devotional service is called Raganuga Bhakti. So here is a definition of Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti, sometimes people think that's a very highly elevated. Yes, it is highly elevated. We should understand at least what is the definition of this stage. So when a devotee follows in the footsteps of the devotees of Vrindavan, his devotional service is called Raganuga Bhakti. And this happens only after ruchi, the taste, when there is a taste, natural taste. As Prahlad Maharaj said that I have natural taste towards Supreme Lord activities. So this is mentioned in Sanatan Shiksha. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Sanatan Goswami, then he spoke about this platform of Raganuga Bhakti. Jiva Goswami says, when a pure devotee, this is very interesting, When a pure devotee follows the footsteps of a devotee in Vrindavan, so one has to first be a pure devotee to follow in the footsteps of devotee of Vrindavan. So when a pure devotee follows the footsteps of a devotee in Vrindavan, he develops this Raganuga Bhakti. So one has to first become a pure devotee, a perfect person, perfect devotee. Then a person follows in the footsteps of Vrindavan Vasis. That is called Raganuga Bhakti. Ishte swara rasika raga parama avishtata tata bhave tanmaya bhave bhakti satra sa atra ragatmika odita. Ishte swarasika raga. When one becomes attached to Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ishte means Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ishtadev. So when one becomes attached to Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to one's natural inclination to love Him, Swa means personal, one's own nature. So Swa Rasika Raga, his natural inclination to love Krishna. When one becomes attached to this process of loving Krishna with his natural inclination, Swabhavika Bhav, and then when he is fully absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord, Parama Avishta. Avishta means fully absorption. So many people have Avishta means Abhinivesh in the material sense enjoyment. They have Abhinivesh in this outside activities which are sense gratification. So we have to turn our Abhinivesh from our absorption from material activities to spiritual activities. So it is said, is fully absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord. Parama avishtatata bhave. When this stage comes, when a person is fully absorbed in the thoughts of Lord and he has natural inclination to serve Him, that state is called transcendental attachment. Tanmai ya bhave bhakti. Tanmai means this natural transcendental attachment of bhakti. And devotional service according to that attachment. And the person who is performing such devotional service is called as Raganuga Bhakta. So that devotional service is called Ragatmika. Sa atra Ragatmika udita. This is called spontaneous devotional service. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita, but this comes in Chaitanya also in Sanatana Shiksha. Ragamai bhakti rahoye ragatmika nama taha shuni lubdha hoye kauna bhagyavana. Thus, devotional service which consists of raga or deep attachment is called ragatmika, spontaneous loving service. If a devotee covets to such a position, covets means is very much desiring to have such an attachment towards Supreme Lord. He is considered to be the most fortunate. Kauna bhagyavan. Mahaprabhu says the person who reaches to this level and he has great attachment towards the Supreme Lord. He has a great feelings. Ragamai bhaktira hoye ragatmika na taha shuni lubdha hoye kauna bhagyavan. If a devotee has such great desires to have such a position which gives a supreme benefit of reaching to Supreme Lord's abode and have his personal spiritual identity and serve Him there, he is considered as the most fortunate person. So if you remember in the previous verses, we discussed Utsaha Nishchaya Dhairya Tattat Karma Pravartana Janasangasta Lolyam. There was a word which came as Lolyam. So Lolyam means having a greed towards outside objects. But here it is said we should have Lolyam or lobh or greed towards this subject also, which is totally different from materialistic life. Lobhe vrajavasira bhave kare anugati. The lobh. Shastra yukti nahi mani. Raganuga prakriti. What is the prakriti? What is the swabhav of this Raganuga bhakta? If one follows in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan out of such transcendental covetousness, he does not care for the injunctions or reasoning of the Shastra. You see in these some of the statements you can reflect from the pastimes of Gaur Krishna Das Babaji, or many of the Babajis which are there in our Vamsidas Babaji is there, and Jagannath Das Babaji. So we see there how they were not bothered about many of the injunctions or reasonings of the Shastra. So much absorption was there, and sometimes their activities are also like if you discuss those activities sometime for neophytes, those will be very disturbing also, that they will not be understand properly the activities of such great devotees. So that is a very high stage, because there is a lot of strong desire in their heart to be in such a situation of being a Brajvasi, inhabitants of Vrindavan. So if one follows in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan out of such transcendental covetousness, he does not care for the injunctions or reasoning. This is called Raganuga Prakriti. This is the Swabhav. This is the way a person behaves. Ragamai Bhakti Rahoe Ragatmika Nam Taha Shune Lubda Hoye Kona Bhagyavan. So we have discussed this again, this idea. Bhaiye Antara Ihara Duita Sadhana Bhaiye Sadhaka Deha Kare Shravana Kirtana Mane Nija Siddha Deha Kariya Bhavana Ratri Dine Kare Vraja Krishna Rasevana. This is very interesting. Person has become a Raganuga. He is following perfectly in the footsteps of Vrindavan Vasis, but how he behaves. There are two ways there are two processes the way he executes his Raganuga Bhakti. There are two processes by which one may execute this Raganuga Bhakti, which is external and internal, Bahya and Antara. Person who is on Raganuga platform, he will perform this in two ways. How? When self-realized, the advanced devotee externally remains like a neophyte. Bahye sadhaka deha kare shravana kirtan. In the outside world, when he will be traveling and everywhere, he will be meeting people. So he self-realized himself, but he's also very much advanced, but he lives like a neophyte and acts and executes the Shastric injunctions very properly, which are like Shravan Kirtan. And internally, but within his mind, in his original purified, self-realized position, because now he knows his spiritual position and he's on the path in which he's following the footsteps of Brajavasis. So he serves Krishna in Vrindavan in his particular way, because as I told you, the highest way to stay in Vrindavan is to have Manas Seva. So here also it is said within his mind, in his original purified self-realized position, he serves Krishna in Vrindavan in his particular way, in his own Swabhava, like it was mentioned in the previous verse of Bhakti Swami Sindhu, Swa Rasika, Swa Swabhav, his personal way, personal inclination to serve Krishna. In that way, he serves Krishna in his mind. Or outside, he shows that he is following properly all the Vedic literature and doing hearing and chanting to set an example for others. And he serves Krishna 24 hours a day, all day and night. Ratri dine kare braja Krishnera sevan. Day and night he serves Krishna in this way. Being particular in following. We should be very much particular. There are so many following trends nowadays. So here Rupa Goswami is advising that you should be very much particular to whom you are following. So being particular in following. So this verse says, Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi tadbhav lipsuna karya vraja loka anusarata. The advanced devotee who is inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna's in Vrindavan. So now it is becoming very particular. Earlier it was told that one should follow in the footsteps of Brajvasi. But which Brajvasi? Now it is becoming more and more particular. There are a lot of Brajvasis. There are Gopas and Gopis and so many other cows and buffaloes and so many peacocks. And so whom should one follow and what his personal inclination is? So here it is becoming particular in following someone. So Vrajalokānusārata, one should follow the activities of particular associate of Krishna. Like it will be mentioned who are those particular associates, their names will also come. One has to follow in those footsteps of by seeing and meditating the activities of those particular associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. So in this way he should execute service externally as a regulative devotee, seva sadhaka rupena. It will not be visible to everyone, like those who are performing Vedi sadhana bhakti or who are not on the platform of such high devotional service. So they will not be able to see this Raganuga Bhakta, who is actually externally looking like a regulative devotee, like Seva Sadhaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena Chatri, but internally he is very self-realized person. Thus he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. So Raganuga Sadhana Bhakt, he performs the bhakti in these two ways, Bahya and Antara. Bahya Rup, he shows in a way that he's a perfect sadhaka, and internally he is very much absorbed in Krishna bhakti and performing his manas seva 24 hours a day. Constant following. Nija bhishta Krishna preshta pachete lagiya nirantara seva kare antarmane hasa. Actually, the inhabitants of Vrindavan are very dear to Krishna. So Krishna preshta, the word says in the verse, Krishna preshta. The inhabitants of Vrindavan are very dear to Krishna. If one wants to engage in spontaneous loving service, he must follow the inhabitants of Vrindavan and constantly engage in devotional service within his mind. The eternal residents of Vraja are known as Krishna Preshna, very dear to Krishna. Among Krishna's various devotees, in the first statement it said, those who are devotees, eternal residents of Vraja, they are called Krishna Preshna. Among these Krishna Preshna devotees, there are will be very, like some will be there who will be having this mood of doing some great service towards Lord. Those who possess the mood of service toward Him, for which one intensely hankers. For which one intensely hankers. Nija abhishta. Abhishta means there is a hankering, there is a strong desire. So there is a personal strong desire to become a follower of these Krishna Preshta devotees. So following in the footsteps of those beloved devotees of Krishna whose mood of service one hankers, one should constantly serve Krishna within the mind through one's internally conceived spiritual form. So he has reached a platform, this Raganuga Sadhana Bhakt has reached a platform where he is now strongly performing bhakti and following one person, one associate of Krishna, very dearmost associate of Krishna. He is meditating on his activity and he is now receiving his, like his spiritual form will be revealed to him now. Choose to follow, to serve. Krishnam smaran janam chasya preshtham nij samihitam tat katha ratascha aso kuryad vasam braje sada. Prabhupada has also given this verse in the purport. The devotee should always think of Krishna within himself, Krishna smaran. So the Raganuga Bhakta will be constantly having a smaran of Krishna in his heart. Then he should also choose janam cha asya. This person should also choose a servitor of Krishna. He should choose a very dear devotee who is a servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan. So Raganuga Bhakta will be having a strong smaran of Krishna in his heart, and he will be choosing a person in Vrindavan. These are different references like Rupa Goswami has given, and they come in Sanatan Shiksha also. So Raganuga Bhakta now has a strong remembrance of Krishna in his heart and is choosing a person, a dear devotee who is a servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan and is following that personality. One should constantly engage in topics about that servitor and his loving relationship with Krishna. Tat tat katha ratascha aso. And one should live in Vrindavan. Kuryad vasam raje sada. Always situate himself in Vrindavan. If one is physically unable to go to Vrindavan, he should mentally live there. Dasa sakha pitradi prayasira kana raga marge nija nija bhavera ganana. So now those devotees, the list of those devotees whom a Raganuga Bhakta should meditate, they are coming, the list of those devotees. So Krishna has many types of devotees. Some are servants, some are friends, some are parents, and some are conjugal lovers. Das, Sakha, Pitradi, Prayasira Gana. Sakhya Bhav, Dasya Bhav, Vatsalya Bhav, and Madhurya Bhav. Devotees who are situated in one of these attitudes of spontaneous love according to their choice. So generally Vaidhi sadhana bhaktas don't have choice, but here a Raganuga bhakta has a choice to meditate on one of them. Are considered to be on the path of spontaneous loving service. So devotees who have such attitudes. Those desiring to serve in the devotional mellow of neutrality, Shantarasa, should aspire to be like the cows, sticks, buffalo horns, the flute, the kadamba trees, and so forth. So there are different varieties of fruiting trees in Vrindavan, and there are different species of animals in Krishna Lila. So one can desire to serve in that neutrality mellow, Shantarasa. And he can become cows, take buffalo horns, flute of Krishna. Those aspiring to serve in the mellow of servitude, so those Raganuga Bhakta who are aspiring to serve in the mellow of servitude, Dasiras, they can meditate and follow in the footsteps of Brajvasi such as Raktaka and Patraka. They are having the names of those devotees who servants of Krishna are there. Devotees aspiring to serve in the mellow of fraternity, Sakhiras, should follow Sri Baldevji, Sri Dama, Sudama, and so forth, all Krishna's friends. Devotees aspiring to serve in the mellow of parenthood, Vatsalya Ras, should follow Sri Nanda and Yashoda. And those aspiring to serve in the amorous mellow, Madhurya Ras, should follow cowherd girls like Lalita and Vishakha. While residing in Vraja, one should immerse oneself in hearing narrations of the eternal devotees. So one has to follow in those footsteps and one has to hear about the activities of these eternal devotees who are serving in these modes. There is no greater place than Braj Mandal to perform bhajan of Sri Radha Krishna. Therefore, even such exalted devotees as Brahma and Uddhava pray to take birth as a blade of grass or a shrub. So in the 10th canto, this verse comes where Uddhavaji is actually desiring Asam aho charana renu jusham aham syam Vrindavane kimapi gulmalata oshadinam Yadustajam swajanamare patham chahitva Bhejur mukunda padavim shrutabhir mikyan. The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members. Are very difficult to give up. Yadustajam swajanam. They have given up their family members and everyone, gopis, and they have forsaken the path of chastity. Are patham chahitva. They were so chaste, but they broke all rules and in the middle of the night they went and saw Krishna. And they take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Bhejur Mukunda Padavim, which one should search for by Vedic knowledge. So Vedic knowledge one reads and remembers and meditates to search these lotus feet. And seeing these lotus feet, the ladies of Gopis of Vrindavan have given up everything. In the middle of the night, they went and saw Krishna. So Uddhava is remembering those incidences, which one should search by Vedic knowledge. Shrutibhir vimikya. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan. Vrindavanam kimapi gulmalata oshadinam. Let me become some bushes, creeper, or herbs in Vrindavan. because the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. Uddhava is not even desiring to have direct lotus feet of Krishna. He is first asking that gopis should trample on him. Let him become some bushes, creeper, and herbs, so that gopis can trample on him, so that he can get the dust of their lotus feet. Asam aho, this is his great desire. Charan renu jusham ahamsya. Let me become such Gulma. He actually is personally right now also is situated in Vrindavan as Gulmalata and is always desiring that pure devotees and gopis always go on their head and he can get the dust of their lotus feet. Lord Brahma has become these four heads have become the four mountain peaks in Barsana. So then all the devotees who are going and taking darshan in different temples of Barsana, they can trample upon him and give the dust on his lotus feet. So these are the desires of great devotees. Uddhava desiring to stay in Vrindavan just like a small creeper, and all the great devotees are always. There are various bhajans which have been described. Nija nikata nivas dehi govardhanatvam. Let me always be situated near Govardhan. All the great souls, they desire that their samadhi and their photo at least be placed near Govardhan so that they can always be in Vrindavan. So that is a desire of great devotees, and that is the highest goal one can achieve also in this human life, to become the anugami of Krishna's devotee. So thank you very much for joining today. If someone has some questions, they can ask, or we will end today. We'll
Hare
meet
Krishna
in the
Prabhu.
next year now. The new year we will meet then. Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
Prabhu. You
Prabhu.
have some question? Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, I had during your discussion a question raised in my mind कि एक कनिष्ठ भक्त को जब जब अपने जैसे अभी मैं भगवान के जो फोटो लैमिनेशन फोटो उसी में सेवा कर रहा हूँ, तो does a devotee need to do any type of vigraha seva to come to the platform of Raganuga stage? मतलब ये इसे silly question में भी, so I'm just asking कि at any point of time or मतलब इससे compulsory or like other way of preaching is also by preaching the
So,
glory of Lord.
the question is understood. What my understanding on this is that if we keep strongly performing our devotional service, and if such desires are coming that we should perform some deity worship, or instead of photo we should have some vigraha at our home, then few things need to be considered. That do we have sufficient time, or there is someone who can take care of the deities very nicely, and proper worship standards can be established, and you can then have your devotional more and express to the deities. Daily you can pray to the deities. Yeah, deities will be there and you can pray very nicely to them, but proper standard should also be established. One thing is this. Another thing is this, that we should have blessings to install those deities, that we should not just by based on our own some inspiration which might be there for a few days and might not last for long. So because if deities are there, then lot of other things also accompany, like addressing them and like properly offering bhoga to them. So these things also accompany, and proper standards and proper culture of the home also there. So better if you have some strong desires, and you can consult your seniors there who are nearby you. They can understand your situation. If someone is there who can properly guide you, and if you have proper situation that deities will be taken care, then your strong desire will be fulfilled in that way. But some guidance should be there. You should be like consulting
Yes,
someone, and
Prabhu,
then
you surely told this, but actually three things you told. Number one is standards should be maintained, and secondly you told ki blessings. It's not ki just I kept, and there should be blessings of the senior devotees who will be serving that type of maybe let's say I kept Jagannath Baladev. So in that way, any maybe my Sikha Guru, or in that way any senior devotee to whom I know, they should be installing
someone nearby you who can understand your personal situation, because right now I'm very far from you, so I can't comment on someone nearby you who can understand your situation and some scenario he understands, then he can guide you and very nicely you can then welcome them.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else has some comments or questions or clarifications? Some feedback?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Dandavat
Mataji.
Pranam, Prabhuji. A very nice class, Prabhuji, today.
Thank you, Mataji.
I want to ask, sometimes I am feeling two bhavas mixed together, like Vatsalya bhava and Dasya bhava. Is this normal, good? Sometimes three also, Prabhuji. Is this?
First of all, my humble obeisances to you, Mataji, that you are having 2-3 bhavas. We are struggling to have at least one.
Sorry, Prabhuji. I don't know, is this correct or not? But,
yeah, you are a mother, so you have natural Vatsalya bhav towards Lord Krishna.
that's there, Prabhuji.
And
That
also,
comes first, Prabhu.
Vatsalya bhav also contains Sakya bhav and Dasya bhav. Like Dasya bhav is there and Sakya bhav contains Dasya bhav. Vatsalya bhav contains both the bhavas, Sakya bhav and Vatsalya bhav. And that's very good. Please bless us also that we can also develop some Dasya bhav first at least.
Not like that, Prabhuji. Sorry, I don't know what is this, so that I asked you.
Thank you for expressing.
Is this correct or not? I don't know. I have to focus in one bhav, or I have to control it, controlling other bhavs like that.
Vatsalya bhav includes Sakya bhav and Dasya bhav. If you are having
yes.
Vatsalya bhav, then it will include definitely Vatsalya bhav will include definitely Dasya bhav and Sakya bhav.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, in reference to my earlier question, I had a second doubt. Actually, even before taking initiation, even so, we had a like BACE, that Bhaktivedanta Academy of Cultural Education, जो बच्चे हमारे youth जहाँ से college से हमारे कृष्ण consciousness में बढ़ के आते हैं, तो we were serving Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra indirectly. So that way, from that day itself, मतलब कि desire is there, but three things you told, कि standard blessing and standard, still I have not that proper sincerity of waking up, and that proper you can say, as my duty is not allowing in that way, कि I have to attend night duty also sometimes. So some standards at this point of time I'm not able to follow. So if desire is coming, ki okay, I have a desire to serve Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Maharani. So at least initially what we should do, we should pray, or
good question, Prabhuji. So what you can start with, actually, you find out who has those deities at home. Like someone who is connected to you nearby has some deities, and start serving and going there, taking their darshan and performing there, helping them actually. Because there will be somewhere you will be having some devotees who will be having those deities. So in this way, your desire to worship them will be fulfilled also, and your desire will also be solidified, like whether it's proper to bring deities at home. Because at least someone should be there to take care of them and very nicely maintain the standards. Jagannath Baldev Subhadra loves rice dal a lot.
It's so natural, na Prabhu. You know, I don't know about other devotees. Even for Krishna, for people, for devotees who are from Orissa, this is so natural sometimes. But again, I think to myself, I have so much unearths. How can I serve? So sometimes I just make a informal statement. Jagannath, you decide something. I don't have any quality. So desire is okay.
If you have strong desire, then one day it will be fulfilled. But start serving somewhere where already some deities are there. Anyone else has some comments or questions? Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining. Happy Krishna Conscious New Year. Let's hope and pray that it becomes a very nice year. After two years of COVID time, let's pray that next year when we will meet, it will be a like we can do more activities for Krishna and serve Krishna more better way. Hare Krishna. This is the prayer we can offer to this upcoming year. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining and taking out your time. Hare Krishna.
प्रभु जी ये पीपीटी शेयर करेंगे?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hari Bol, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji.